Welcome back to the Reynolds Reveal. I'm your host, Morgan Reynolds, and yes, we do welcome your calls. The number 218-862-9829. My special guest today, Dr. Judy Wood, the brave and brilliant one who's led us out of the mental darkness regarding 9/11. And Dr. Wood, you've addressed a number of things on 9/11, and I know, as I said earlier, that toasted cars are a special interest. So let's go there and talk toasted cars.
Great, and why I like to call them toasted cars, not burnt cars, because they're not necessarily burnt. We don't know what happened to them, but we know they're toast. They're history. You can't fix it. You got to go get another one. It's it's toast. It's history. So that's what I mean by toasted cars. And these cars that looked to be going into spontaneous combustion, they just suddenly went in what looked to be flames. I'm not going to assume they're flames, but this happened all around shortly after various events occurred. And, like the dust cloud rolls out from Tower 1's demise, and then the cars lit up. And we know that timing because the various firefighters would say, the dust, went up, it blocked out 100% of the sunlight. You couldn't see your hand in front of your face, but then thank goodness the car in front of them just lit up because then they could see where they were. So we know the cars, quote, lit up right after the dust went, blocked out the sunlight. Blocked it out for, several minutes at least. So there's this strange phenomenon that it appeared to be fire, but, hot things glow, but not everything glows as hot. Plastic may not have been melted around like window trim, yet the paint looked blistered up. Just strange things occurring. And it's some as far as, a quarter mile or half mile away were seen going into spontaneous combustions. One thing kind of interesting with the car park, that it sounded like somebody shooting a gun. And it turns out some police had extra bullets in his glove box, and the bullets started exploding. It sounded like gunfire.
Yeah.
It's kind of interesting. So this is a strange phenomenon. Next to the cars, there's trees that didn't look burned at all. There's paper that didn't burn. There's buildings that didn't get toasted. Just the vehicles. I'm not talking about absolutely every square inch of the whole city. I'm talking about there are pictures where the cars appear to go in spontaneous combustion and nothing around them. That's weird. So what do we have that's consistent with this? And you also notice the tires go away, but when the wheel rim drops to the pavement, it seems to have stopped the effect, whatever it is, as though it was grounded then. You start thinking, yeah, cars are up on rubber tires. They're grounded. And they're not grounded. And it doesn't mean not grounded at all, but they can build up a charge and not be able to discharge it fast enough. And the similar thing when you look at the towers. The different distance from the top to the ground, yeah, it's grounded, but it can build up a charge faster than it can discharge it. With the exception of like the TV antenna, but you bet that was super grounded.
Hey, can I ask a sideline, hold that thought, sideline question. Motorcycles aren't grounded to the extent cars are. Is my perception correct? Yeah, I was out there in a lightning storm. So I'm saying, is it better? It's better to be in a car at that in that circumstance in terms of grounding.
Well, cars are further off the ground than the motorcycle is. But you also are you contacting the ground or not? I just wouldn't want to be riding in a thunderstorm.
Yes, that makes me uncomfortable. Okay, well, go ahead.
Here's another fun tidbit. Remember that ambulance parked in front of the towers that survived? Sure. Nothing else did. I'm willing to bet that when ambulances park, if they're going to be loading and unloading passengers who might have heart problems, they probably have a thingy that drops down and grounds them to the ground. And it may have been just enough to make.
Okay.
it could have made the difference. I'm just saying possibility. And I do know that it's part of the regulations for ambulance design, the grounding issue, because of, you know, jumper cables
Okay.
for starting people's hearts
Yes.
and so. So here we have this issue of grounding. So if the top of the towers, they're the furthest away from the ground, they're going to be building up a charge faster than they can discharge. With exception of maybe the core columns, they're so beefy that they probably, you know, have a better connection to the ground. So if there's any part of that building that's going to survive from being able to discharge faster, as fast as it's building up the charge, wouldn't you expect to be the core columns?
Yes.
Especially right next to the ground.
Mm-hmm.
And that's
Anchored.
right. And I wonder if that was the issue with the, those remaining core columns that were about 700 feet tall that suddenly went poof. After, delayed effect when there was probably more charge
A
available.
delay.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
This is just looking at observations. I had also asked John Hutchison, who can replicate every single one of these effects, if when he's running his gizmo, if there's some issue with grounding, he says, oh yeah. This is before he knew what the evidence was that I was talking about. He said, yeah, things that aren't grounded build up the charge faster, and you get toasted. So start applying that to why tornadoes like trailer parks. They're not as well grounded as regular, houses.
Houses.
They don't have big sewer pipes and stuff going down. They are grounded, but not as heavily grounded, so they can build up a charge faster than they can discharge. And like the trailers last year in the Texas tornadoes, you have a big metal box on rubber tires, and you don't see dumpsters and stuff going up. You just see the truck trailers going up.
Mm.
So that seems to be a consistent thing. And you think of that more Oklahoma. If tornadoes had gone through there before, and you don't have basements on these houses, and they immediately rebuilt, it probably is something similar to that, and as well. So understanding
what about conventional teaching or the establishment analysis of tornadoes? Is there something missing here that involves the static field and some kind of electromagnetic phenom or interference that really underlies tornadoes that we don't know about, or we the public?
Yeah, they used to say, straw would stick in trees because of X, Y, and Z, but they've realized that doesn't explain it. They don't, and so they shrug their shoulders now officially in the official things. But now looking at all of these things we've looked at in common with, what builds up a charge, and if you like the underground of the World Trade Center was not destroyed. I'm not saying zero damage. I'm saying it was not destroyed. It pretty much stopped at ground level. There was something magical about that, except for the few outer wheat checks and the core column sticking up. So it just taken right down to the ground, but not below ground. You didn't see dustification down in the basement for the most part. And all this is consistent. So let's back up here. Now, how does Hutchison do the parallel evidence to all of this? Which he also finds that something not grounded well builds up a charge faster than it can discharge. What he does is create a static field, and within that static field, he interferes various radio frequency signals, for example, microwave. Now, okay, let's look at weather events. It's normal in the Midwest to have storm systems moving through and get tornadoes. Head to the southwest corner of your basement, right? That's usually where it's coming from. And that's been normal for eons. But then suddenly in 2008, there was a sort of a step function in, you start getting these supersized tornadoes and really super duper weather events. Well, if you normally have the storm system moving through the Midwest, you have a static field around the storm systems. People say they can feel a storm coming because it's a different electricity in the air that they can sense. And if you have this static field and then it interferes with radio frequency signals, could be unintended consequences, but you're fixing to mess up. Something's going to happen. And television went from analog to, they required everyone to switch to digital beginning, I think it was February 2009. So the summer of 2008, they were finishing up putting in brand new radio frequency transmission towers, for the digital television. So here you have a step function of radio frequency transmission towers going up all over the place, and you have the normal weather events in the Midwest, this storm system moving through. You're going to have unintended consequences. It's fixing to mess up. And that deal in Beebe, Arkansas, where the birds fell out of the sky, they exhibited a lot of the similar effects. That there's something weird that happened there, and the blob on the satellite image, I downloaded them. The blob didn't move, even though the storm system was moving. So if there's a radio signal traversing that zone where the storm system moved to, and it was just mixture, probably would have had that effect in a certain volume of space for a certain length of time. The evidence is consistent with that. It's not absolute proof, but the evidence is very consistent with that. And if that didn't happen then, it's bound to happen at some point, because it's a problem waiting to happen. Okay, now we come, drum roll, the final straw. So we had this static field around Manhattan on 9/11. We don't know if it was used or how it was used, but there was a static field there because we had thunder record at the three major airports surrounding Manhattan, JFK, LaGuardia, and Newark airports. And there happened to be this hurricane just offshore. Well, that's inconvenient to have a hurricane there, if that's what you're using it for, to get the static field. Instead, now let's think of, instead of having a storm system produce a static field, what other kind of fields might you have everywhere? Smart meters. If you have smart meters,
tell us what a smart meter is.
We're getting more and more wireless signals around. We're getting cell phone wireless, and my router went belly up, and I need to get a new one. I went to China Mart, and they only had wireless ones. I wanted a wired one. And it's really getting hard to find wired only equipment that doesn't put out wireless signals. And if we're filling the air with wireless signals, what on earth are we doing? That's making this so you don't have to wait for a storm system to move through. You have you're charging the atmosphere with all sorts of signals, and if we know for a fact that if Hutchison can reproduce all these effects that happened on 9/11, he can reproduce those in his lab by, his evidence is create a static field, and within that interfere various radio frequency signals, and you get these weird effects. What are we doing to our environment? The smart meters do that.
But give me what is a smart meter? Is this connected or part of any wireless?
Yes. Instead of your electric meter on your house wired to the electric company, because it taps off the electric line that feeds your house, and they have a meter that shows how much electricity you've used, and you get billed for it. Instead of coming out to your house to read your meter, they just read it back remotely. It sends a signal to the office.
Okay. So it's just one more of these wireless signal systems that's out there.
Yeah, but it is interesting, right? But why are they requiring it on every house? And not just in the United States, in England now. And there's some people who are very sensitive to the field effects from these wireless, smart meters, they call them, that they've moved out in the boondocks, up on some mountain somewhere, and they've been required at gunpoint to get a smart meter. So to the point they've say, just unplug it. I don't want it, electricity then. I'll find some solar panels or something. Why is it that?
Hmm. So
And it,
that would suggest something nefarious at work, not just unanticipated consequences.
it needs some explaining that nobody seems to be looking at. And we do know
Hmm.
for a fact what mixing these signals can do. So
Dangerous stuff.
if it is
Dangerous.
unintended consequences, then accidentally somebody's going to dustify the whole planet. If it is unintended consequences, everybody better wise up and say, wait a minute, we got to look what we're doing before we do it.
Yeah. Yeah, you would think somebody would have thought about this in the engineering community earlier, huh? But Judy
And
Wood's the pioneer.
this is not a theory. This is, let's look at the parallel evidence produced by John Hutchison. The reason why I look to Hutchison's work is I don't have to rely on a textbook, and stories. Tesla died before I was born. I don't, so that's a story. But Hutchison, I go to his lab. I went there. I watched. I, experienced in person. I know what exists. So that's something in the here and now that is demonstrated in front of me. So I know that this is a real effect. And so if you have a static field and interfere radio frequency signals within that static field, you're fixing to mess up. And so smart meters all over the country or the planet, you're fixing to mess up in a big way, in a really big way.
Free energy of a destructive, uncontrolled kind, I gather, instead of a benign free energy.
Well, let me add to that. The title of my book, that's another distortion that my detractors often say, oh, she said a free energy device was used. No, there's evidence of what happened on 9/11, that energy was directed in such a way as to do what was done. But that energy being directed in that way, it could also be directed in a different way to put out good, to put out free energy for people. So
Yeah.
the evidence shown on 9/11 is also a demonstration that free energy technology exists. It's
It
however it's
certainly
used,
is.
whatever you
Was.
call it.
Okay, I gather we are near the end of the Reynolds Reveal, episode 19. Is that correct? By the
Yes.
clock on the wall suggested.
Sorry we didn't get back to Ryan, but hopefully we answered his questions.
If not, we're going to make another go at it in a month or so. I got to have Dr. Judy Wood back on the Reynolds Reveal regarding 9/11. And Dr. Wood, you've addressed a number of things on 9/11, and I know, as I said earlier, that toasted cars are a special interest. So let's go there and talk toasted cars.
Great, and why I like to call flames. I'm not going to assume they're flames, but this happened all around shortly after various events occurred. And like the dust cloud rolls out from Tower 1's demise, and then the cars lit up. And we know that timing because the various firefighters would say, the dust, went up, it blocked out 100% of the sunlight. You couldn't see your hand in front of your face, but then thank goodness the car in front of them just lit up because then they could see where they were. So we know the cars, quote, lit up right after the dust went, blocked out the sunlight. Blocked it out for, several minutes at least. Call them toasted cars, not burnt cars, because they're not necessarily burnt. We don't know what happened to them, but we know they're toast, their history. You can't fix it. You got to go get another one. It's, it's toast. It's history. So that's what I mean by toasted cars. And these cars that looked to be going into spontaneous combustion, they just suddenly went in what looked to be.
Welcome back to the Reynolds Reveal. I'm your host, Morgan Reynolds, and yes, we do welcome your calls. The number 218-862-9829. My special guest today, Dr. Judy Wood, the brave and brilliant one who's led us out of the mental darkness